Nebraska is 2/3 of the way done with their 2024 season. So it's finally time to give you my grades for every single coach with the Huskers, positional coaches, coordinators, and of course, our head man, Matt Rhule. So really quick, we have a lot to get into throughout today's video. Hey, if you're excited about the final 4 games for Nebraska, I know I am. Hit that like button. And hey, if you're new to the channel or still a returning viewer, make sure to subscribe. I post daily Nebraska football content through thick and thin. So if you're a diehard Husker fan, make sure to subscribe. You will be thanking yourself that you did. But without further ado, let's get into it, going over my coaching grades for every single coach on the team for Nebraska. I'm going to start off with the positional coaches. So guys who only coach a certain position on this team. We'll get to the coordinators. We'll get to Matt Rhule as the video progresses. So I want to start off with Glenn Thomas, our new quarterback coach / co-offensive coordinator. And I have 3 criteria when grading these coaches. Number 1, recruiting. Number 2, development of talent. And number 3, pure execution on game day. So keep that in mind. Glenn Thomas for Nebraska gets a B+ grade. Listen, his recruiting has been a B+. Of course, we've seen him, get a guy like TJ Lateef last offseason. He got Deion Raiola. He's already having a lot of success with a certain 5-star quarterback in the class of 2027. And talking with, a person close to TJ Lateef, they say they really like Coach Thomas. He's very genuine, and he does a really good job recruiting these guys. So gets a B+ in recruiting. The development's been good. We've seen Hoiberg improve. Raiola's had a good freshman year. That gets a B-, and then execution gets an A-. I think that the quarterback room in general has played really well on game days, and they're not the reason we're losing. They're not the reason we're losing. They're executing well, especially for a true freshman quarterback. So Glenn Thomas overall gets a B+. Good things to come for him. Hey, maybe he's our next offensive coordinator. We'll get into that. Let's go to the running backs coach, E.J. Barthel. EJ gets a A- grade. Listen, this guy checks almost every single box. He gets an A as a recruiter. Again, getting a guy like Jamarian Parker in the class of 2025 was huge. He's talking to guys like Devin Walker in the class of 2026. So he's been recruiting very well. And he's also not just recruiting his position. He's recruiting a lot of these East Coast guys who are not playing running back. So he is one of the best recruiters on the staff. He gets an A there. Development's been good. We've seen Dante Dowdle, boom. We've seen Emma Johnson, boom. For that reason, he gets an A- in the development. And execution, I think it gets a B, just because at times the running backs have not produced as much as they should. Dante Dowdle has at times not played his best ball games, but overall, I think that E.J. Barthel gets an A-, one of the better positional coaches on this team. You got to keep him around. You got to keep him around if you're Matt Rhule. Wide receivers coach Garrett McGuire gets a D+ grade. Starting off with his recruiting, B-, honestly not bad. You get a guy like Isaiah Mosey in this class. You got some high upside guys like Bryson Hayes and Tanner Turk. But a lot of the reasons that we're recruiting high-level wide receivers, especially guys like Isaiah Mosey or Michael Terry, it's because of Dylan Raiola more than anything. Because those guys want to play with a good quarterback. So I don't really equate that too much to McGuire, but his recruiting's all right. Development's a C-. I think he's done good things with Janiron Bonner and Ja'Cory Barney, but there's still a lot to be desired. And the execution on game days gets a D-. That shouldn't be too controversial. Perimeter blocking has been Nebraska's biggest weakness offensively. We've seen Isaiah Nair and Jamal Banks have good games and just completely not put up any stats the next week. So execution on game day gets a D-. Garrett McGuire gets a D+ grade overall. Last but not least, on the offensive side of the football, Donnie Raiola, our offensive line coach, he gets a B+ grade. Starting off with his recruiting, that's an A. Man, oh man, he has been a phenomenal recruiter for Nebraska. Multiple 4-star linemen in this class and last year's class. Development gets a B-. It's tough to say with development just because a lot of the guys who are still starting for Nebraska have been here for so long, but I think he's turned around a lot of careers like a Bryce Benhart, even like a Turner Corcoran. So I think he gets a B- in the development part and then also a B- in the execution. The O-line's been fine. They've not been elite, but they've been fine. They've been top 50% in the Big Ten statistically. So overall, Donnie gets a B+. Going to the defensive side of the football, the positional coach is Terrence Knighton, our defensive line coach, gets an A grade. Spoiler alert, that's the best grade I'm going to give today out of our positional coaches. Recruiting's a B+ for him. He got some talented guys like Malcolm Simpson, Kate Pietrzak. Nothing crazy there, but it's really, really solid. Development's an A+. A+ development. He's turned around careers like Ty Robinson, James Williams, Nash, Jamari. All those guys at one point were not producing, and now they're one of the better defensive linemen in the country. Cam Lenhart's having a good season. Riley Van Poppel, he's just developing guys at a really, really high level. And then execution, I'm going to give it an A, just because I think this defensive line is the best unit on our team. But at times, again, they're not an A+ just yet, but they're an A. And then Terrence Knight in general gets an A grade. Love Terrence Knight, man. He's been awesome. Rob Dvorak, our linebackers coach, A-. Honestly, a lot of people aren't talking about Rob Dvorak, but he's been having a good tenure so far with Nebraska. Recruiting's been a B. He doesn't really wow you with anything he does recruiting-wise. Of course, you got Christian Jones this class, Vincent Shavers, Willis McGahee. He doesn't really take too many players, but when he does take players, they are pretty productive. For that reason, development gets an A+. I mean, what more could be said? Vincent Shavers has been so great as a true freshman. We've seen guys like Mekhi Bayer have a really good year. John Bullock went from a walk-on to one of the better linebackers in the country. Stephon Thompson's been solid. So development's an A+. Execution is also an A. For that reason, Rob Dvorak gets an A- grade overall. Last but not least, our last positional coach, John Butler. I cannot grade him just because he's only been with Nebraska for like 3 months. So, I really am not going to give him a grade. I think the secondary has been fine. There's just not much that he could have impacted in that 3 months when it comes to development, recruiting, and execution. All right. Time to get to the coordinators. I know you guys have been waiting for it. I'm going to start off with the positive. Tony White, A- grade for Coach Tony White. The only reason it's not higher is because of that Indiana game and the Illinois game. But he's been phenomenal, stepped up when it's needed. The defensive line has been great. I think that a lot of his game playing has been really, really good. Him switching around the 3-3-5. He's implemented the 4-2-5 at points in time. This dude is just a pure leader, all class. I think he should be a head coach after the end of this year. Tony White gets an A-. Marcus Satterfield, offensive coordinator, gets a D+ grade for Nebraska. It hasn't been pretty in Marcus Satterfield's second year with the Huskers. We can no longer blame the talent for this lack of offensive production. We have the talent. We have the talent at quarterback, the talent running back, the talent wide receiver. We're just not putting up points. And a lot of times, again, there's no consistency in what he's calling. It feels like he's throwing darts and, hoping that something sticks, but nothing has been sticking. And even when our offense finds success at the start of the game, it's not consistent. He doesn't really make adjustments, unfortunately. Even against Ohio State, right? I talked about how his entire offensive game plan was centered around short throws and screen passes. Therefore, he centered around our offensive attack around our biggest weakness, which is perimeter blocking. So Marcus Satterfield gets a D. This dude's just not that good, man. He really isn't. And I really, at this point, want to see what Glenn Thomas can bring to the table because he's our co-offensive coordinator. This guy should have an opportunity to call plays, but Marcus Satterfield should be gone. Ed Foley gets a D+ as well. Listen, Brian Buschini's been really good. Our kicking situation hopefully figures itself out, but there's just so many errors that are that shouldn't be happening. The snapping issue should not be happening. The holding issue should not be happening. The kick return issue should not be happening. There's just so many errors where it feels like when we fix one thing in special teams, another error pops up. So Ed Foley, of course, this is everybody in the fan base has been saying this. This guy should not be here next year. If he is here and should not be as a special teams coach, we should be looking for a new man there because, I think he's a fine recruiter, honestly, Ed Foley, but when it comes to actually coaching the special teams, he's not it. Just not it. And that was a bad hire by Matt Rhule at the time, and it's a bad hire now. All right. Those are my grades for the positional coaches and the coordinators. Let's get to our head man, Matt Rhule, my evaluation of his season so far, his tenure so far. What would I give him? I'm going to give Matt Rhule a B grade. It's not bad. It's not bad by Matt Rhule. I think he's been pretty fine when it comes to recruiting. Of course, not like it's going to blow you away, but he's been fine when it comes to recruiting. He's getting top 20, top 25 classes, so that's good. The development's been solid, right? We're going to have a lot of guys drafted this fall. But The only thing about Matt Rhule is I think these close games, you just got to win one of them. You got to win some of these one-score games. You got to get this big upset, and he really hasn't done it so far. So I can't give him an A for that reason. I'm in between a B, B+. Just kind of depends on how he ends this year. If you can, pour them together 9-8 wins, which I still think is possible, yeah, you're going to bump that up a little bit. But, if we're sitting here with 6 wins, maybe I'd bump it down to a B-. But right now I'm going to sit at a clean B with Matt Rhule, which is a fine grade. If he were to be in the A category, he'd already probably be 7-1, 6-2 on the year. Unfortunately, we're sitting at 5-3, so I can't go higher than a B. All right, guys, those are my grades for every single coach on Nebraska's team. Let me know down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comment section. Hey, if you made this far in the video, shout out to you. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And as always, folks, go Big Red, go Matt Rhule, and see you in the next one.